UCB Life Issues with Paul Hammond.
And a very warm welcome to yet another Life Issues. Now, family dynamics these days can be confusing things, can't they? The traditional images of the nuclear family, well, don't necessarily cover it anymore, because you got symmetrical families, beanpole families, blended or reconstituted families. You've got single parent families, some of them are matrifocal, some of them are patrifocal, empty nest families, boomerang families, the list goes on, and we haven't even mentioned the extended family. And sociologists have come up with list after list of ways to try and quantify the nature of human relationships. In fact, there's even an advert for chips now that picks up on this. And while we may be put off with the idea of categories for categories' sake, the complexity of it does show the importance of the urge that drives humanity to band together, even if that sometimes means we exclude those who are other. So where does the multifaceted nature of modern family leave some of those traditional roles and some of those who don't have family? Are grannies and granddads, uncles and aunties as important as they ever were, even though they may have little or no rights when it comes to connection with a child? Do we neglect the ideas of grannies and granddads and uncles and aunties and cousins and extended family? Do we neglect those roles at our peril? Are children disadvantaged if we downplay the role of an uncle to set an example, or an auntie who will listen when you can't tell your mum? And do we rob ourselves of opportunity if we forget to see that those who are not blood relations but are connected to us by community can actually be an important and significant input into our children's lives and into our lives? Over the years, we've talked about family on Life Issues, the roles within it, the pressures of separation, the strengths and the weaknesses. We've talked about mums and dads and step-parents and grandparents. But what about that extended family? And what about that family that is about community rather than blood? So in fairness to my Auntie Minnie, who was always interested in me, she was my mum's sister, and also to my Uncle Reg, who shaped my views on race. He came from the West Indies and was part of the church in Coventry I grew up in, and was a powerful influence for me at a time when the National Front was trying to influence the attitudes of teenagers in my home city. In fairness to both of them, who I would consider part of my family, we ask, what is an extended family and what impact can it make? My guest is Claire Burton from Care for the Family, where she is Faith in the Family Manager. You can find out more about them by going to cff.org.uk. And it is fair to say, I think, Claire, that even in this modern isolationist, separated, distanced world, the concept of family, as well as the actuality of it, is something that is a very deep-rooted driver in all of us, isn't it?
I agree, Paul. I think everybody wants that sense of belonging. You've said it there, that sense of community. And if we look at two Hebrew words to describe family that you'll find in the Old Testament, the bayit was the nuclear family. It described that close family unit, the people who lived in your household. But also there was the mishpacha. That described more of the tribe, a larger group of people, as you've described, living in community, connected by blood, in some case, connected by marriage, or connected just by friendship and locality. And this is typically wider and more multi-generational. Those aunts, those uncles, those siblings, those cousins, those friends, those surrogate aunts and uncles, they're all important, aren't they, in people's lives? And I think that people want that sense of belonging. They want to be part of something even wider than just their nuclear family unit. They want a place where they can belong. And we see that so much here working at Care for the Family. We work along so many different families who come in so many different shapes and sizes. But there's a longing, I think, that people want community. They want others to come alongside them. They want others to support them. They want others to care for them, people that they can be vulnerable and honest with. And I think that's so important. We see it in so many of the different things that we do here as an organization, that people want that sense of belonging and community.
And this is interesting, isn't it? Because that I agree with you wholeheartedly that there is that sort of yearning within people, and you don't have to scratch very far below the surface of people's lives to actually see that manifest. And perhaps the whole sort of epidemic of loneliness that seems to be impacting people, and sense of social isolation that is impacting people, maybe that's another manifestation of it. But at the same time, we do live in a world where we almost celebrate the fact that we can now be isolated, that we can be distanced, that we can be our own people, that we can be our own individuals. And actually, my concern about what affects other people is less than what affects me. And all those sorts of philosophies and ideas that are rolling around in modern Western society. And I wonder whether we still really value that concept of family, whether it be actual or whether it be community-based.
I think we do. I think there's a longing in all of us, as we've said, to belong and to be part of something that's bigger than ourselves. We might have our own individual ideas and thoughts, but I think it's nice and it's valuable. And I think people value and desire to be in community with others and know what they...
But do you think, as a society, because I know you work with people in terms of supporting people in a whole range of things, but and undoubtedly there is within the human heart, as you've said, that desire to belong. But does the message of society, does the message of government, does the message of media, does the message of television, does that actually help people to see the value of family? Or is there almost a sense that we should be playing down the importance of family in the messages that come?
I think research shows that actually, even though we live in a very connected world now where you can access anything, can't you? You can speak to people thousands of miles away on social media. You can connect with anybody. Actually, research shows that actually people are feeling more lonely than they have ever felt before. So I think that there is a desire, though, in people. Yes, society might be saying you can be connected and you can be isolated. But still, if you look at that, people are saying they're lonely and mental health is suffering because they're not connected in community with one another, because they are isolated. Obviously, the pandemic didn't help with that. But even that we've come out of the pandemic, I think we are seeing the crisis of isolation. And yes, society, I think, is saying you can be isolated. You can have connection with lots of people, but not deep and meaningful connection. And I think that is what people long for, that ability. And it happens in family. It happens in extended family. It happens in the family that are not your blood family, but they are your friendship family. It happens that you can have vulnerability. You can have connection. And that is, without that, I think mental health suffers, mental well-being suffers, when people are not living in community and connection with one another. We
keep using that word community, don't we? And I suppose there are many places where, the local football club and maybe the local working men's club, there will be all sorts of groups that function within local areas and so on that make their own little community. And I suppose for some people that will be like a family connection. But is there a difference between that sort of community and the imagery that we have within Christianity, where, because it's not just, we are community, therefore we are like family. I mean, we're told that we are brothers and sisters in Christ. That was why Uncle Reg was called Uncle Reg when I was a teenager, because even though they were separated by birth from a whole sort of halfway around the world, him and me dad were brothers in Christ. That sort of imagery. Have we got something more to offer in thinking about this as a consequence?
I think so. You use the example of the football team, isn't it? There's a community there because there's all a common interest that they play football together. And of course, as they spend time with each other, they will develop friendship. But I think, isn't there more that the church can offer, that they can offer that place of vulnerability, care, support? And I'm not saying that doesn't happen in a friendship at a football team. But I think there's that. You are right. We are called brothers and sisters in Christ. We are family together, and with that can come a sense of vulnerability and support that some people might not get actually in their blood family. We come across a lot of families here where there is conflict within family, and I think, and that is really difficult. Family is not perfect. They're, family, blood family, marriages, sibling relationships, parent relationships with their children, they can be difficult. But actually, when you've got people alongside you, the church family alongside you, supporting you through that, caring for you, helping you to be vulnerable, letting you know that you're not the only person who's going through those things, there's a depth there, isn't it? That is more than just hanging out at the football club on a Friday night. There's a depth of relationship that comes from the church, or not always comes from the church, but would be helpful if it did.
Yeah, well, yes, that's it, because we have to acknowledge that it doesn't always happen, that you don't always get that level of commitment, because there are plenty of churches where people, go for an hour and that's the level of their interaction with the other people in that church. So what makes the difference? How do we find that difference? How do we apply that difference? What is the intentionality we need to bring in order to make that happen?
I think it is that. It's the intentionality, isn't it? The intentionality to come alongside others purposefully, to love and care for them. And I think we see it here at Care for the Family. We offer a befriending service. We offer a befriending service to parents of children with additional needs. And we offer one to those who've been widowed young, or to those who are a bereaved parent. And there are so many people who benefit so greatly from that befriending service. They want somebody to intentionally contact them once a week by phone, get alongside them intentionally, befriend them, listen to them, and be interested in what they have to say. They might not offer any advice, but just to be that listening ear. And I think it's the intentionality to do that. As people, we need to be intentional in caring and loving others. Yes, relationships will happen organically, I guess, but not without there being intentionality on either side.
Because if we're going to say, on the one hand, we're going to say, well, actually, here am I'm in a fairly secure nuclear family. There's the two parents that are the children. It's a good, solid, happy place. In real terms, we don't need anybody else, in inverted commas. I mean, that's a nonsense, because we always need the extended roles coming, as part of the dynamic around us. But we might kind of think that, especially in the sort of messaging that the nuclear family is what it's all about, that we hear so often in society now. But there's an intentionality that then actually says, well, if I look out and I see someone who is maybe hasn't got family, or someone who is of a different generation, and I start to include them within our sphere, it's understanding that we will benefit, they will benefit. What are the sorts of benefits that come by opening that door and either engaging with our extended family or creating an extended family?
I think our lives are enriched by other people's opinions, other people's views. You've said it right at the beginning. That person that maybe a child or adult can go to and speak to outside of their immediate family. I have two teenage daughters now. I have so many extended family biologically, but also within the church community who I trust to speak into my children's lives. So in these teenage years, if it's, I can't come to mum first of all, I want advice from somebody else. There are people that are around us that I would trust to be offering great advice to my children.
Because historically that would have happened, because, I mentioned my Auntie Minnie at the beginning. Now, I only saw my Auntie Minnie for a few weeks every year because she lived in Scotland and I lived in Coventry. But there was a consistency about her taking time to be interested in me. And of course, historically, it would have been because my Auntie Minnie lived around the corner. And if I was struggling, I'd go around to see her and I'd tell her the stuff that I couldn't tell my mum or my dad. But as families are drawn out and extended away from, separated away from each other, the children still need those points of connection, don't they?
Absolutely. I run something here at Care for Family called the Kitchen Table Project. And when we talk about the different elements that help build children's faith, there are five significant elements. Home, being intentional, being authentic, belonging, and prayer. And that sense of belonging is so important in helping children develop faith, because if they are, and that happens through being involved in their church community, serving, helping, having a part to play, realizing there's something bigger, but also the intergenerational relationships that come. And that's key. Like, that'll keep bringing children back into that community of church. If there are people, it might be somebody slightly older than them. It might be a peer. It might be your Auntie Minnie. It might be older people. But I think that sense of belonging, the relationships keeps us in community, doesn't it? And we talk often about that here at the Kitchen Table Project, the significance that can have on a child's faith.
How far do you think, if we're going to look at these extended, whether it be, and we're going to say this over and over again, so apologies if you get tired of us saying it, but whether it be actual blood connection or whether it be those sort of intentional, created relationships that come through, maybe through a bond of faith, maybe through an understanding that we have the same Heavenly Father and the connection. How far do those relationships go in terms of input into our children's lives, and maybe as well, because my dad, I'm an adult, but my dad still thinks he can tell me what I can do. And, my lads are adults, but I still think I can tell them what they can do. I mean, how far does the extended family go in terms of input into the lives of children, or indeed us as adults, in terms of being accountability, discipline, encouragement? How is there a cutoff line with it, do you think?
I think it varies in every relationship, every context, every family. I think the key is trust, isn't it? You're not going to let your children, you're not going to let people speak into your children's lives, maybe who you wouldn't trust. It's about building those relationships. And I think that there'll be different points. There'll be somebody who might offer encouragement and advice. And that is the extent of it is. There might be somebody who's an older teenager and a child looks up to and admires them and sees them reading the Bible, so copies, or sees them dancing in church and copies. But then there'll be the deeper relationships where there is trust, where I think then you would allow more input. I wouldn't allow everybody, I'm sure you're the same, to speak into my life and offer the same level of support. So again, it's back to that level and depth of relationship, isn't it? And how strong that relationship is, how strong that connection is, how intentional that relationship is, I guess.
A sad reality then is that for many extended families, that depth of relationship gets lost, doesn't it? Because people do move, people do live at the other end of the country. There is that sense of lack of, yes, we're connected, but we're connected by a text rather than by a conversation, or rather than by sitting down and breaking bread together and eating together. And, those things get lost. And suppose if we're going to have relationships that are meaningful in our family's life, we need to be willing to work at them.
I think it's not always about the quantity of time that we can spend with people, is it? Sometimes it's the quality. Sometimes getting together at special occasions, birthdays, Christmas, for some families is enough for there to be a connection point that then the text isn't enough through the year. But then for other families, they might see each other regularly, but there are difficulties, there are challenges within the family, and then the depth might not be there when they see each other often. I think it varies in every family.
So, when we think about those people who are non-related family, And I can think of people who, when my lads were small, they took on the role of surrogate granny and granddad because both sets of grandparents were living miles away. In one case, they were on the other side of the Irish Sea. So there wasn't that day-to-day interaction. So this older couple in our church took on the responsibility quite gladly to take interest in our children, to work with our children, to encourage them, to be there for them when they needed it. And as a consequence, when they died, our lads travelled from all across the country to make sure they were at the funeral, because such was the level of relationship. But when we think about that sort of relationship, who merits, what are the sort of characteristics that we should be looking for to either contribute or to receive by creating that extended family dynamic around our children and around us as adults?
I think people who are interested in our children and young people's lives, we want role models. You look at people's lives and there are people that you would think, oh, they would be an amazing role model. In my child's life, in my life, there are people that you admire. And I think that especially when we're talking about children and young people, it's good to have people alongside them who understand the challenges and issues that our children and young people face today. They're growing up in a very different society, in a very different world to what we grew up in. And here at Care for the Family, we do a lot to try and raise awareness, bring knowledge to parents, to carers, to extended family members. We look at concepts about the mental health and mental well-being. We look at concepts about digital usage and just the online world. And I think it's important when we're looking for people to input into our children's lives, those people that are interested in knowing where our children are, the challenges that they're facing, how they can support them well, and being clued up in some of those areas, I guess. But being interested in what's going on in that young person's life. Again, a good listener, to listen to, and not always offer advice, but to listen.
And I suppose at the end of the day, that's not a bad bit of advice or a bad sort of thing to aspire to, simply as being a member of a family. I mean, all too often, the children of a family are sort of, they're not really given the attention. I mean, very often they demand the attention these days, but attention that actually listens to them, actually engages them, actually treats their opinion and also the pressures that they are facing and the things that they are feeling, treats those things with respect, as we would with an adult. Because very often it's like, oh, it'll be, once you grow up, you'll be all right. But actually, where a teenager is struggling in the moment is their moment, and that needs to be given appropriate gravitas. Being interested, being aware, being willing to engage, that's good advice for all of us, isn't it?
Yeah. Being present. We run many parenting courses here at Care for the Family, and the advice in the parenting courses can extend to extended family members. It's about being present and being interested and listening and taking that time to value that young person or that child, not to come with judgment. At the Kitchen Table Project, one of the other elements that help build faith is a warm, loving home environment. And when we say home, again, not talking necessarily about the house we live in, but the community that we're in. So as creating a warm, loving environment, what does that mean? It means listening. It means being present. It means being interested. It means not judging. It means loving well our children and young people. And as we do, we help them to feel that they can confide, that they can talk to us about what's going on in their life, to be a place where their questions, their doubts, their worries, their concerns are safe in talking to that person. They're safe in sharing all of those things.
Okay, but so I am part of an extended family. I'm also part of community families. I am, in the main, a very present granddad because most of them are not that far from me, and I think sometimes they wish I was a little less present, but that's an entirely different life issue. However, I recognise that I am a distant uncle. simply because of the way that families have spread out and the way that life has gone and the fact that my nephews and nieces have grown up and there wasn't the opportunity for me to engage with them because, in the main, they were growing up before the digital revolution. So there wasn't the WhatsApps and there wasn't the text messages and all that sort of stuff to use. So the dynamic, the relationship is very different. And I wonder then, is there a sense which, no matter how far it's gone, if you have the right mindset about this, you can actually still pick it up and you can still be significant as a member and see the value of being a member of an extended family and be significant in what you contribute into those lives, even the grown-up children's lives.
I think you're right. It is mindset. It is the intentionality, again, just to connect in whatever way that is. And again, we talked about earlier the quality of relationship, not necessarily the quantity. It can be the text, it can be the phone call, it be the connection in person sometimes. But there are lots of things that we as adults may be able to offer young children, older children. It might be our skills, it might be our interests, our hobbies. It might be that we can offer career advice or advice if our nieces and nephews or other members of the church are looking for different careers, jobs, universities, school. There might be interests with hobbies such as football and
homework music, and days out and all of those things. Yeah.
There are so many ways that we can connect. And I think coming alongside parents, sometimes parents have busy lives. We might be ourselves members of a community where we don't have children or we have grown-up children, and we have more time on our hands to offer that support and come alongside and to be a listening ear or to be a practical help to others. There are so many different ways, I think, that we can support and help. And it is about a mindset. I think it's about being creative with that as well, but also being realistic about the time that we have to give. Many of us will lead busy lives. So it's about, being intentional, but also not setting high expectations either.
So here we are, we're creating this image, I suppose, where we're saying whether you're an auntie and an uncle, granny, granddad, there's value for you as part of an extended family. And if you are part of a nuclear family, there's a value for you if you have an extended family. And we need to nurture those relationships. We need to build them. But we're also saying if you are part of a church, there is a value for a single parent family that are in a church. There's an undoubted value if people will be surrogate grannies and granddads and uncles and aunties and cousins to that family. There's a value for that family to get that will enrich them, will help them, will strengthen them. Is there also a value and enriching a positive? Does it flow both ways, Claire?
It absolutely does. Relationships flow both ways, don't they? We're not in relationship always to just give. There are so many ways that we will be blessed in supporting. You talk about that single family there, and as you come alongside them and you support them and you might practically offer help, you will be enriched by the children that are spending time with you, that are interested in you, that want to know what you have to say. You will be blessed by the parent that is grateful for your support, but it's about that. It's about that relationship. It's about that connection, which isn't just one way. I think so often here we offer befriending, we offer single parent holidays, and the people that run these, so the befrienders and the people that host the single parent holidays, they will be absolutely blessed by the people that come along, that they are getting alongside, that they are offering support to. They will be blessed by them and the feedback that they can offer. In fact, with our befriending services, befrienders are often linked with somebody in a similar circumstance. So although they've got alongside somebody to befriend them, they might be further along in their journey than that person, but they will be blessed by that person that they are supporting as well. And it's the same with our relationships. There'll be times where we give more and we receive less. And there will be times where we receive from others when we weren't expecting it. But that only happens when we're in relationship with each other, doesn't it?
And it's important that we point that out, I think, in doing this, because it would be very easy for people, especially maybe in their older years, to go, oh, well, I've lived my life, I've raised my kids, I've done my, now it's time for me to rest. It's going to be a big sacrifice for me to do this. But actually, less of a sacrifice, more of a two-way street and a mutual upbuilding that is available. At the same time, is there a sense that we need to recognise we are called to this? That actually, if we are part of a nuclear family and there are people in our church community, our faith community, our wider community who don't have anybody, there's a calling on us to open the door to them, to reach out to them. And if we are on our own and there's a family over there who are in need of someone who's support, or if we are a couple and our kids are all grown up, I mean, there is a ministry, a calling, a vocational element to this, isn't that, as part of being a Christian community?
Well, we are one body, aren't we? And one body functions together. One body functions, and when one part of that body hurts, the rest of the body supports that. And when one part of the body celebrates, we celebrate with them. So I think, yes, you talked about people on their own. I think when we see people on their own, is including them, intentionally including them as part of our family. It's connecting, it's helping, it's getting alongside people. But it's also being realistic about how much we can do. We can't be everything to everyone. But who are the people then that you would gravitate to? Who are the people maybe that you spot who are on the fringes or are feeling isolated? Is there one person that you can get alongside and support well? And I guess if we were all feeling that way, if it were just one person or one family that we were included into our wider family, then there would be a richer place for that, wouldn't it?
But can a person ever be real family in that context rather than tolerated visitor? Can you actually take that relationship so that it becomes as though you were genetically related rather than just a tolerated friend?
I absolutely think it can. As a single woman myself, before I got married, I was included very much into other people's lives within my church community. I didn't grow up in a Christian background. My parents didn't have faith. I was brought in and cared for. They will be lifelong friends for me. I was definitely, so on a personal level, I can say that. And there are people that have come into my life. There are people that I see in my church community. There are families that we work with in Care for the Family. And you can see that they have strong relationships, often sometimes stronger in depth and stronger in intentionality than even a blood relation. It's again, it's connection. It's being intentional. It's being relational. Those bonds, I think, can be as strong. Often people need people outside of their immediate family to be that support network and to be family. I think it genuinely can take place and be significant.
Here's the reality. The world in which we live seems to trumpet the value and even the aspiration of individuality, and of standing on our own feet and of having our own space and limiting the number of people that we are connected with. We live in a world where digitally we can connect with hundreds of people, but know none of them. And the truth is that has had an impact on families. The historic idea where your uncles and aunties would be in the next street, and you could go to your granny's house if your mum wasn't in, or you could. That reality has faded for so many children and for so many families, adults. That has created a gap as well. especially as the children grow up and leave home, and that empty nest syndrome leaves that sense of isolation and loneliness and emptiness. So maybe it is time that all of us started to see that family doesn't have to be, just like it says in the advert for the chips, doesn't have to be family. It doesn't have to be blood. And especially in the context of a church where we are told that there is a spiritual bond between us, actually, can we start to open our doors to those who are on their own and not just tolerate them as friends, but actually include them as brothers and sisters so that they are aunties and uncles to our children? Can we start to see the role of those older members of church as surrogate grandparents, honorary grandparents, to influence and to mold our children, but also to encourage and support us when we want to run screaming from the room because the teenager's done it again? And if there is that potential to create extended family that is meaningful and that is enriching and that is valuable and adds value to our lives, do we then also create an opportunity to show the love of God, which would reach out and make all people his children, more apparent to those around us, to those who are our generation, and to those who are the generations to follow? Family isn't just about being related. Family is about looking around and saying, how can I be a meaningful part of that person's life to build them in Jesus? You've been listening to UCB Life Issues. I'm Paul Hammond. My guest this week, taking a look at this with us, and a big thank you to her for coming on the programme, is Claire Burton. She's from Care for the Family. Find out all about the work they do, including the Kitchen Table Project, by going to the website, which Claire is
cff.org.uk. It's been great to chat with you.
And thank you also to my producer, Rachel, for keeping everything on the straight and narrow. Why not join us next week for another Life Issues? Ta-ra!